What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Links and Locks Best Bets podcast presented by Bet365. I'm Jason Sobel from the Action Network. He is Ben Everill from Golf Bet, and we're here to play 18 holes, make 18 bets for, hey, we've got a full field event on our hands, the Sony Open. Last week was, hey, I love Kapalua. I love everything about it. I love watching golf there, but 59 players or 144 players is a better. I like getting into those bigger fields and getting a chance to get some big numbers on some players as we have this week, and we like some of those big numbers. So, Benny, before we go too far, we've got to give everybody out there a reminder that the Links and Locks podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boost with them than with anybody else. Every day, they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boosts and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Colorado, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, restrictions all apply. Benny, I'm not sure if we had talked about 50 players last week, we would have gotten to Chris Kirk. We might have mentioned 50 players here on the pod. We still didn't get to Chris Kirk. Congratulations to him. Great story for him. His continued comeback from everything he's been through. And look, well, I'll take it. I'll take the L. I'll start 0 for 1 on the year. That's just what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. I had him on my radar for this week before he did what he did last week because I've seen him play well in person at the Sony a few times. But even saying that, I wouldn't have been putting him in my win column this week. I just would have been having him pretty much where I'll have him anyway in the top place scenarios. And I certainly didn't expect that he would not only win, but like he did it quite impressively, to be fair, the way he came out and held off all the challenges on Sunday. Great shot into 17, etc. It's glimpses of the guy we saw. How many years ago was it when he was running through that FedEx Cup playoffs, the Billy Horschel year, and those two were sort of at their prime then. I think he's gone through all the personal stuff. He's gotten through the other side, and now everything's a bonus, and he's playing that way. And good luck to him. Well done, and he's certainly put his life on the right track. That's for sure.
Yeah, and certainly wouldn't be a huge surprise if Chris Kirk goes back-to-back, because like you said,
Correct.
I think there are a lot of us who like him better this week than we did last week. In fact, I'm sitting here, Benny, I've been staring at it for the past week. This is a one-and-done pool that myself and a buddy do every single year. Filled it out before last week. You've got to do every pick before the season starts. I know some one-and-dones are by the week. Others, you got to do them all ahead of time. That's what this one is. And we've got for the Sony Open, sitting there staring right at me, Chris Kirk. Just a week off. So close.
Indeed. Oh. That's the way it goes. You know what? There were a few guys that really disappointed last week. A few of my picks obviously let me down. One is that Aussie I talked you into, Cam Davis. I had another chat with him, and he thinks it's an anomaly. We'll see if I believe him or not. That's the way it goes, I was considering throwing out, I always do the player market bets with Bet365. I always do the positive side of things. I was going to throw out a negative on Davis just to get the mojo going the other way, but I refrained instead. But yeah, look, like Ricky Fowler sort of wasn't the greatest last week, but then other guys were what we expected. Like Sung Jae Im was great, like I thought. Sahith Theegala had a pretty good start. He's the type of player that you're going to see up the top of these boards a lot more often. So look, there's some positive signs, and one thing going into this week too, we saw a little bit of, action from some of the Euro guys, but top 3 on the board this week, mate. Favoritisms are Europeans. Did you know that we've been going 58 years at the Sony Open and never had a European winner? Not one, and they're the top 3 favorites on the board. So I just did a little column this afternoon on will we see that drought broken? Spoiler alert. Don't think so, but I do think they'll go close, and I think it's a record that is on the way to being broken because of the way the new structure of the tour is. We've got a lot more European players playing at this time of year, and I think that I think that's coming soon. Although, yeah, it surprised me that not one in the 58 Sony Opens has been a European-based player.
Very interesting because I posted the odds when they were first released on Monday morning, and I had a couple of Twitter folks say, I get that Ludwig Aubert is going to be really good, but does he deserve to be the favorite in a field of 144 players on a course that doesn't really suit his game? And I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Who else would it be? And he's now actually drifted a little bit. He is tied atop the board with Matt Fitzpatrick. That makes sense. Tyrrell Hatton right behind them. I think if Hatton even had like one week under his belt at Waialae, maybe he'd be the favorite. But flying in blind, he and Fitzpatrick, maybe that's keeping their number down a little bit. But I won't be mentioning any of those three names coming up. It doesn't sound like you will be getting to them as well, Benny. So we're looking for some bigger numbers. We're going price hunting. We're going shopping. As we play 18 holes, making 18 bets for the Sony Open, Ben Everill, you are now on the tee. You may swing away.
Yeah, I'm not going to go with the European to start with my first outright pick, but I am not going to go with an American either. I'm going to go with what we would call an international eligible player. Look, it's interesting. The last, whatever you want to call it, I think 10 out of 12 have been in the top 10 in strokes gained putting the week that they've won this. So it's generally a putter's course. But at the same time, you needed to be really good in strokes gained tee to green to get yourself those chances to putt. And just because they've done well putting that week doesn't necessarily translate they've always been good putters. Hideki Matsuyama is a case in point there, winning a few years ago, having a really good putting week for himself despite not having his best tee to green, but being a good tee to green player anyway. Long way around to go to what I'm going to say is this is a ball striker who I think can win. To win, he'll need to do just a little better than he normally does on the greens. He'll need to have an above-average week, but that's Canadian Corey Connors at about the 25-1 mark. His last 4 starts at the Sony Open inside the top 12. He was 13th tee to green last season on the PGA Tour and 14th in birdie or better percentage from 150, 175 yards. Waialae gives you a lot of those approach shots from that distance. You can't overpower it. You have to play to spots. Your driver gets taken out of your hand sometimes. I think if Corey Connors has just a half decent putting week, he could be your champion. The more I talk about him, the more he's getting close to being my 17th hole. But because I've already put other picks elsewhere, I'm going to stick with where I went with my initial pick, which you'll get later on. But don't be afraid to go Corey Connors all the way.
Well, speaking of which, this happens pretty frequently on the podcast. I'll tell you about Corey Connors later on in the pod. Hint.
Yeah.
You might know where I'm going with my 18th hole. So I'm going to start out with, suffice to say, I like your Corey Connors play here. 4 straight top 12 finishes at the Sony. Second hole, as always, I'm going to start out with a long shot. And I told you about number hunting, especially this time of year.
Yeah.
At some point, you just look down the list and you go, whoa, why is his number so big? And granted, maybe a guy wasn't in form last year, but it's a new year. And if a guy has proven that he can win at this level, he's proven he's a good player. If he's got some decent scores under his belt at this golf course, all of those things ring true for Billy Horschel, whose number is much too big this week. He was, in fact, I'll give you a bonus one. There were 2. He was number 1 on my list of mispriced players this week. 1B was Emiliano Grillo, who played last week. Didn't do anything special, but he won at Colonial last year. If you can win at Colonial, you can win at Waialae. He's 90-1. Massive numbers on each of those players. I'll give you Billy here, but if you like Emiliano just as much or a little bit better, I'm totally fine with that. But yeah, I'll go Horschel 80-1. Last year was not the greatest year for him, but closing out the year on the PGA Tour and DP World Tour as he goes back and forth late in the year, he finished in the top 20 in 5 of his last 7 starts. So let's not sit here and pretend that Billy Horschel's not good at golf anymore and can't climb up a leaderboard. So I thought 80-1 was a massive price for a guy who can certainly win in this kind of field.
And I think that price is inflated because was it last year or the year before where he went there when he was really struggling and didn't really want to be there, had a terrible week or something. Yeah. Something in his past is, I guess, an anomaly to us, but maybe not to the data and the odds makers. They might be seeing it like he's not necessarily played well there. But there was one of the he just wasn't even himself the last time I remember him being there. So that could be affecting that price. Look, I think there's quite a few guys in the long shot scenario this week. So I'll move things around here. I'll give you a long shot. And this one's just you had actual good reason. This one's on name alone, but this is a Ryder Cup winner from only a few months ago that knows how to play in the wind, which we had forecast to potentially get Thursday and Friday, and he's 150 to 1, and that's Bobby Robert MacIntyre. I mean, 150 to 1. You're just not going to see that for a guy that talented that often. Look, he hasn't, as I said, he hasn't been a regular at Wallow. We haven't had European success here at Wallow, I said, but I'm looking at that number going, small sprinkle chance for a player that good. Yep. You kind of can't ignore it. And there's a few there. I think there's quite a few in that 100 or 80 plus 100, 150, 200 that could easily be up and around there when we're talking about things on Sunday. Think about we've had some big name winners recently too, but we've also had some big odds. Like I think the average odds for the winner maybe around 45, 50 to 1 in this tournament. Even the names that are there weren't necessarily top priced favourites when they did win. So I wouldn't be afraid to venture down the board this week. A lot of players are starting for the first time. Some get hot that way, some don't. Some have been playing, with their mates and really under the gun. Some have been playing in Europe or in Australia or wherever it is, have a bit more freshness to them. So there's plenty of chance for those longer shots to get up. I've got another one, but I'm going to hold him for a top 40 play later, so I'll hold on to it. But Bobby MacIntyre, 150 to 1. I just on reputation alone, look at that, please.
Benny, I think you make a lot of sense there. I get, look, he's traveling halfway across the world. He's trying to set up camp in, I believe, Orlando, where he's going to be based throughout the PGA Tour season, going to be living in America for the first time. There's a lot going on. I don't love him this week as far as like, hey, give me one player you think is going to win. But again, when you're number shopping, when you're just looking down the list, and you're like, whoa, that one jumps out. Certainly that 150 to 1 number on Bobby Mack is a massive number and underscores just how good he is. All right, I'm getting to the fourth hole. And speaking of history on this golf course, if you had bet Matt Kuchar for a top 10 every year for the last 18 years, you'd be up. I don't know what to tell you. You'd have more money than you have right now. Maybe you should do it again this week then. Don't want to miss the boat. He's 8 of 18 in his career, finishing in the top 10. Top 10! I mean, that's not easy. That means he's like really, really good at this golf course. I know you might think, kind of like Billy Horschel, oh, Matt Kuchar, he's kind of washed up. Finished top 10 in 2 of his last 3 PGA Tour starts of 2023. Played the PNC Championship with his son, Cameron. They were up there for a while. Cameron actually tried to Monday qualify this week, so you know that his son is out there. They're playing some competitive golf. He's pushing dad to go out there and play some good golf as well. And I love the fact that he is 55th on the official world golf ranking right now, Benny. Top 50, going into Augusta, will get into the Masters. He hasn't played there in 3 years. You know he's dying to get back. And so that's leaving a little more motivation for Cooch.
Well, I'll move something around here and say repeat, rewind, but I've got Kuchar in the top 20 bracket here.
Okay.
I'm going that's more conservative. He's about 2 to 1 or around about that to be in the top 20. Like you mentioned, everything you said is true. A former champ at the venue as well. And look, the family time, like you mentioned, I didn't know if you'd know about, obviously, the son trying to qualify. But he's only 2 shots out of the playoff mind you, too. 2 Monday qualify. So he was right up there for a young gun against a lot of tour stars because a lot of the guys who are rookies this year or KFT grads, etc., were in town for their rookie orientation in Hawaii over the weekend, but did not make the field and had to go Monday qualify. It was a stud, a pretty stellar Monday field, and for him to be just 2 shots back speaks to exactly what you said. I think they always have their big family vacation around this time. They spend it in different parts, different islands. They love it. It's one of their favorite times of year, and you just know Cooch would not be just led, like he's the type of dad that's just not letting his kid beat him, and that kid's pushing him. You can tell he's pushing him. he's going to be a potential up and comer on the tour in the next few years. So I went a little bit more conservative, but yeah, Kuchar top 20 for me. I think that it's a pretty conservative play.
Yeah, I think that certainly makes some sense. I'll get to my top 20s here at the 6th hole. And yes, I have multiple top 20s. Now, we talked about long shots earlier. If you want to take a shot, I will say I've taken a shot on these guys already in the outright marketplace. They probably make more sense as top 20s at big numbers, but Kevin Kisner did a fantastic job in the booth last week.
Yep.
I don't know if the odds makers think Kevin Kisner is done. I get it. Didn't play well last year. Took a leave of absence for a while. Just had to get away from the game. Kevin Kisner has 4 top 5s in his last 7 starts at the Sony Open. Kevin Kisner, however poorly he's been playing, shows up at this golf course and plays well just about every single year. He's anywhere from 250 to 300 to 1 in the outright marketplace, around 9 to 1 for a top 20. The other name I'll give you, my boys Colt Knost and Drew Stoltz, who are on Gravy and the Sleeves, the show before mine on PGA Tour Radio every day. They ran a little pro scratch event out at Whisper Rock this past weekend, a little 2-man event. Ches Reavie's team won, but as they mentioned on air the other day, if Ches didn't have a partner, Ches Reavie's team still would have won. He played that well this past weekend. This is not like he's just beating up on members. Like, there are a bunch of other PGA Tour pros and former pros who are playing in this thing. They're like, when Ches gets it going, he usually gets it going for a while. He's played well on this golf course in the past. He's at 300, 350 to 1 outright, 9 to 1 for a top 20. I like both Kisner and Reavie. Take a shot on both of them. Even if you only hit one of them, it's still going to be a really nice hit for you.
I'm filing that Reavie information away for Amex and Phoenix and a few others coming up.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah, good insight there, mate. And Kiz, like, I was literally had him in my sights here, and I was thinking, okay, is he like now just going to be the announcer dude, and he's happy with that, or whatever else? But then I thought, if anybody would be the type of guy that could come off that announcing debut and get the good vibes for what he had done, and then just be able to rock up and contend, he's that type of dude. He's that, like, laid back, like he's going to rock up at Sony where he's got good vibes and feel like, I got nothing to lose now. I'm pretty happy with what I did last week. I know that I've got a future arm, etc. It could almost be the making of him both on and off the course last week.
Benny, we talked about motivation as far as Kuchar a few minutes ago. Think about Kevin Kisner. He had to sit around in a booth all last week and talk about his friends playing golf. You think he's not motivated to go out there and kick some butt this week? You know he's not going to be like, man, I'm going to sit around. Jordan Spieth was on, same show, Gravy and the Sleeves. He was on there on Tuesday, and they were talking about Kisner, and he goes, what's Kiz like? You know, Kiz like mid-late 40s, so he's pretty much done with his career. They go, Kevin Kisner's 39 years old. You know he wants to go out there and show that he's not 47, that he's not ready to hang it up right now.
Yeah, love it. All right, let me get you to a top 10 play. And I know that I said that I would stay potentially away from the top of the board, but the one guy in the front there that I actually think can contend and maybe get that European thing off the duck egg is Tyrrell Hatton. And I'll say that because I've got him as a top 10 again, or just outside the 2 to 1, etc. As a conservative player, just don't know how much his head is fully in it yet. This time of the year, you saw him doing his usual shenanigans last week, a little bit here and there. T14, not too bad, pretty good putting effort, and I think that's why I think he's got a chance. He's a good putter, essentially. Last year on tour, he was 7th in strokes gained putting. We know he can hit the ball well. We know he is theoretically, one of the best players easily in this field. That's why he's at the top of the board. He should have won more on the tour. He's definitely talented enough to do it. If his game turns up and his head stays switched on, this is a course he should theoretically be able to take down. Whether he does or not, I'm not fully convinced. That's why I've left him in the top 10 bracket. Tyrrell Hatton should be able to bust the hoodoo. Not sure he quite will.
Yeah, look, Hatton's certainly good enough to go out and win on any given week, and he's due. Those are the kind of guys that I usually like. I mean, at a bigger number, Hatton's the kind of guy that I started picking late last summer a little bit because it's like He's played well enough to win, and he hasn't won. I know there's no such thing as the law of averages, but whatever law it is, at some point rewards guys with a victory because they've played well enough to win. Russell Henley's a guy who, up until like a year, like he hadn't been winning, but he'd been playing really well. And at some point, like it just, the good stuff comes, whether it's karma, whether it's coincidence, whatever it might be, those wins start coming. So it makes sense for Hatton. I'll get to the 8th hole, and I'll go with the top 40 play here. Justin Suh finished 41st here a year ago. I think he's at least one notch better than he was then, getting through his rookie season. This is a guy that I like to target in West Coast events. He's a very cerebral player. Speaking with him on a handful of occasions last year, I really got the sense that this is a guy who, he understands the game of golf. He understands his game. He understands how to make his game fit specific golf courses. I mean, we're talking, this was at Oak Hill last year for the PGA Championship where he was in contention for a few days. And I asked him if he was taking sort of a conservative approach or more of an aggressive approach. And his answer really blew my mind. He said, well, some holes I'll take a conservative line off the tee, then an aggressive line into the greens. Other holes I'll go aggressive off the tee, conservative into the green. I mean, just, you could tell that this wasn't something where it was kind of like, let me think about it. I guess aggressive. Like, he knew exactly how he was strategizing his way around the golf course. And I think he's just a very, very smart dude as far as golf smarts and figuring out his way around a golf course. This is a strategic golf course, a technical golf course, and I think that it will fit him very well. Top 40 plus 120 this week, Benny.
Okay, fair enough. 9th hole, I'll go to another strategic golfer and a guy that we already spoke about. I'm going to double down to the top 5 for Chris Kirk, the winner last week. As I said, I already had him slated for top 5 in this hole, or even potentially my second outright choice before last week happened. It's funny that him winning almost brought him back a level for me here, rather than forward, just because it can take a little out of you, obviously winning, etc. But at the same time, I have witnessed Justin Thomas go back-to-back off the 2. I think Ernie Els did it back in the day as well. It's possible. There is also a high correlation, even though Siwoo Kim last year was neither great putting, like, as I said, most winners were, nor had he played at Kapalua before. Prior to that, pretty much most winners had at least played at Kapalua the week before. And so I think guys who have done that are not the same golf course at all, except just having those reps and having that feel, having that jazz, I think helps. And I just don't see Kirk going too far backwards. That's all. I can see him making the odd mental error because he'll be a little tired, but I think he'll contend at a place he's always content. 2 top 3s in the last 3 years. I think he can do it again. And if luck goes his way, he could win again. So I'm going to go about 550 or 6 to 1 it is for a top 5. I think that's a decent. I think it's a little silly not to at least consider him on your pages this week.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Benny. Chris Kirk certainly could go back to back. When he gets hot, he tends to stay hot. We will try to stay hot with our back 9 in just a second. But one more reminder: the Links and Locks podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than with anyone else. Every day, they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays. They don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boosts and see why. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Colorado, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. As we make the turn, it's my tee on number 10, and as usual, I like to go with my first round leader play. I know the tee times are out as we record here on Tuesday evening. I have not looked at the tee times yet. I know there's maybe some thoughts that one wave could have a little advantage over the other one, so I will offer my preemptive note that I have not studied the first round leader marketplace, the tee times and the waves and the weather and the wind and all, how that could affect things. But I will still give you a name that I think should be pretty good. It's a guy that played well last week, finished in 4th place. He's got the long putter now. He's a really good ball striker, tee to green. The putter was a struggle, but much like Lucas Glover, much like now Akshay Bhatia, who's doing it as well, Byeong Hun An looks much better on the greens with that broomstick putter. He is 50-1 first-round leader. Finished 11th last season, Benny, in round 1 scoring average. For as much as I like the guys full tournament who played last week and are going island hopping and playing this week, I like him even more for first-round leader. Like this is, if you want an edge, this is your edge. Whether it's DFS showdown contest, first-round leader plays, play the guys who have already played 4 rounds and have that under their belts.
Well, I'll jump straight into 11th with a similar idea for my first round leader. Guy was last week. A guy who's reasonably high on the odds board, but again, I'm waiting for better odds, and I think I can get that at the first round leader. He's part of the morning wave, and that's former champion Russell Henley, the guy who can putt. I do think that, like, generally speaking, if conditions are, it's been raining over there early this week. It's a little soft. They're expecting some wind Thursday and Friday, but later on Thursday and then throughout Friday. So this is early, as I said, still, but there's a potential for those guys who can get out nice and early on Thursday morning, perhaps with a little bit softer conditions, to knock up a score. We've seen 59 hit shot there before from Justin Thomas. Henley can putt the dots off it. I think you get better odds than the overall when you go for the first round leader on him. And then, as I've said many times in this scenario, I would then evaluate what you do with him for the rest of the tournament after that first round. And that's, you mentioned earlier, I'll just throw this in there. I don't think that those odds are good for Ludwig Aubert. I think they're way too short for a place that his distance doesn't dominate. Those weeks will come where that number actually makes sense, even against good quality, because he's going to be that good. But this week he's a definite wait and see player for me. If he has a great first round, so be it. If he doesn't, at least sort of see, like last week, just to see how he's going and then decide whether to get on. But first round leader, Russell Henley for me.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I like Henley a lot, and you make sense there because his number is too short in the outright marketplace for me. To start at 20-1 for a guy that just doesn't have a ton of win equity, doesn't feel great. I was hoping to get Henley at maybe at 28 or 30 coming into the week, and I probably would have jumped on him. You take him first round leader, you're almost hedging your bets, like Benny said. Either you can hit a first round leader bet, or maybe he's 4 back and maybe he drops to 25-1, and then you can jump on him. So I think you give yourself options there. I will get to the 12th hole, and I've got a few player finishing position bets at Bet365. I'll start with my buy for the week. Look, this is a guy that I'd like to buy in a few different spots. I will buy him here as just a nice, easy play. And look, again, I told you Ricky Fowler was a buy last week, and that was the easiest play on the board because he'd play well at Kapalua, and that didn't come close to happening. So, caveat emptor. Eric Cole, your freshly named Rookie of the Year from last season, 37th or better at minus 120 this week. Look, this is a guy that I really like, a guy that, plays with some passion and plays with some immediacy as a 35-year-old who's just started his second PGA Tour season. But I also like the fact that he played last week. It's a good golf course for him. 37th or better. I mean, it makes a ton of sense, Benny.
Yeah, I can roll with that. All right, I'll go into those player finishing markets for the 13th hole. I mentioned earlier that I had an inkling that I might throw the negative on Cam Davis here, not because I think he will be that bad again, but just so I can maybe just get rid of the jinx I've thrown on him every time I seem to talk him up. He has an off week and then comes the next week and goes brilliant. Instead, I'll look for, and this is, take this with a grain of salt, this is the feel-good hope that this one comes good. So don't be throwing any houses on this. But 47th or better, the return of the guy who shot 82 when he was last out, Will Zalatoris. Will Zalatoris is back this week. I was ready to write him off until I actually went and watched and heard him speak and talk to the people that spoke to him out there today. And I know they always talk a good game and I'm playing great and this different. But he said, look, when I went to the Bahamas, the Hero, I was coming off no prep, no nothing. Was just trying to see where my game was at, and obviously it wasn't quite there. He spent the last month playing high level, he called it, money games against other pros and let's just say high profile mates. Think guys like Tony Romo and Jordan Spieth and Tom Kim and probably Ryan Palmer, etc. All these guys in Dallas, they've been playing high level money games every day. So he's been doing it for a month straight. He's been winning a handful of those. He's been making putts, including 20 footers on the last to take cash. He said, I know it's not the same thing, but it's what jazzes him and makes him feel like he's 100% ready now. He's actually, he called it, I think he said that, in the Bahamas, I quickly crammed for a test and then tried to play. Didn't quite work out. This, I've had a month of actual real preparation, real study. I'm ready. So 47th or better, we can root for that, right? We can hope that he can do better than that. I'm not saying he definitely will. I'm hopeful he can.
The last bet that didn't make my card here for the pod, Benny, was selling Will Zalatoris at 48th or worse. I'm glad I didn't do it, though. I think you talked me out of it. With those comments and the fact that he's playing some golf, I still think it's more of definitely a rehab start than anything else. I still think you can go home and play with some buddies, even if they're PGA Tour caliber players, and take some money off them. But when you get in the heat of the battle and you haven't really played an official event in 9-10 months, I think it takes a little while to get it back. But I won't give you Zalatoris here. Instead, I'll give you a matchup bet.
I was just to say, do you think he falls into the Hideki spot that you talked about last week? Like, let's just stay off him until we know more. Is that what you're thinking?
Probably. Now, I might be on Zalatoris as soon as Torrey Pines in a few weeks. Like, this might not be a, hey, I'll see you at the PGA Championship if you're playing well. But, like, this is not a full season fade on Zalatoris, but let me wait and see what we get from him before I start jumping on him.
No worries.
But, hey, look, if you like him, the price is certainly right this week in different marketplaces. So if you're into it, go for it. 14th hole, I'm going to fade the other guy that you were talking about, Cam Davis. Nothing against Cam. Didn't have his best stuff last week. But I'm really starting to like JT Poston. Really starting to like JT right now. And just something tells me, even though he's not my favorite play on the board this week, something tells me it's going to be a very nice JT Poston week. Again, minus 125. I usually like my matchup bets closer to even money, but I'll take him at minus 125 against Cam Davis. And I'll just count my money at the end of the week because I think that's a smash play.
You know what? I just love that you've done that because that does give my man Davis a chance now. It gives him a chance. I needed something to turn around for him, and that might be just it. We'll see.
All right. You're welcome.
Okay. No worries. Good stuff. All right. 15th hole. Okay. This is one of the guys who's a long shot who, look, I get that he doesn't do much every other week and might not even be known to a lot of people, but to be in the 150 to 1 category and to still be plus money for a top 40 when your last two finishes at the Sony Open are 2nd and 12th, it's you can't go away from it. And that's Hayden Buckley. Look, he talks up. He loves this joint. He probably should have won it last year. Let's be real. Had a really good chance to win this thing. Didn't get it done. But I said like 12th and 2nd in his last two starts at the event and still plus money for top 40. To me, that's something that you can't sort of let go. And I get it. He's not Tyrrell Hatton. He's not Ludwig Aubert. He's not, but he's clearly shown an affinity for the course. He's probably got a little bit of unfinished business in his head as well, and it's good value. So when there's value at the top 40 market, I'll have at it. Thanks very, very much.
I'm going to follow you a little bit, not just on Buckley, but for the 16th hole. I already gave you Justin Suh as a plus money top 40. I'm going to give you one more, and this is a guy that I've spoken with a couple times in the last few months. I know he's working hard on his game. He's a tremendous putter. At this point in the season last year, we were like, whoa, Taylor Montgomery is going to run away with Rookie of the Year. It's sort of slowed down for him a little bit. He's lost some confidence in his tee to green game. I know, like I said, he's been working very hard. I saw his dad, Monty, over at Shadow Creek about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he said, oh, Taylor's out working on his game, getting into some money games. Speaking of, the Will Zalatoris strategy, just let's go play for some money and get the juices flowing. I think Montgomery's going to come back with a very, very strong sophomore season. You can get him at plus 137 for a top 40 this week. He was 12th here a year ago. Granted, he was playing better golf, but this should be a good spot for him. Like I said, if you're trying to identify the best putters, he is one of the best putters out there.
Yeah, and look, I never really get involved in the DFS stuff, as that's usually your cup of tea and others. But like, if you want to do one of those theme style weird teams this week, go with the putters. Look at get value in those guys. Another one, Montgomery. The other, obviously, Denny McCarthy is someone that you could look at too at slightly better odds. And then another long shot would no doubt be Maverick McNeely, who again just a putting genius last season. Might have led the tour, I think, even Mav. Last season in strokes gained putting, and is generally better at this time of year, whether it be.
And Benny, sorry, just to expand on what you're talking about a little bit there, because I know a lot of people, like, we just talk betting usually. We don't get too much into DFS. And people are like, what do you mean, like, taking all the same guys? This is a theory that's a strategy that's more geared towards, say, football, where you want to stack the quarterback and two of his receivers. If the quarterback throws 4 touchdowns and each receiver gets 2, you're probably going to cash in that lineup. In golf, I know stacking doesn't seem to make as much sense. Maybe you could do it all early wave guys, all late wave guys, and try to catch the right tee times. But what you could also do is, hey, I'm going to take all big hitters, or I'm going to take all good ball strikers, or yes, I'm going to take the best putters. The best putters, that does have some merit this week. I'm actually going to throw in a lineup as soon as we're done with Denny McCarthy and Taylor Montgomery, and I'm going to start it there, maybe a Tyrrell Hatton, and I'm going to get some of the best putters in the field this week.
Yeah, as I said, the stats have over a long period of time have said that good putters will always play well here. And if you're looking for this, to me is one of those weeks where if you just want to talk small unit, you want to talk $1, right? Like, or whatever it is, you could have 10 $1 bets at 150 to 1 guys who are just good putters, and you're going to get one of them giving you a run. You're going to be at least cheering one of them towards Saturday and Sunday. I guarantee you that, if not a few of them, trying to get you that little small layout, big return. So
sure.
Yeah. All right. Where am I at? 17th hole. I'm there, aren't I?
17.
Okay. As I said, like the more I've been going on, the more numbers I've gotten that support Corey Connors that I had at the start. But I'm going to go with where my gut was earlier in the week, just based off, again, I do like players who play well in Kapalua and then make the trip over. I think there is generally some correlation to that, and it flies in the face of what necessarily his strength is, because he's a big hitter, this guy, but also can be measured, and also was, I think, 14th in putting or 17th in putting on tour last year. That's Sahith Theegala. I'm going to say that the number on him is pretty good, 28 to 30 to 1. He just is one of those young stud players that is going to be up there more often than not from now on. And we saw a nice, weird correlation stat. The last time he went from like a big open, big hitting place like Kapalua, which in this case is the Masters last year, he backed it up on a small, more tighter course, which was at Hilton Head with another top 5. I feel like that's going to be similar what happened this year. He's got, 4 million family, it seems, following always. He's always got the good vibes around him. He's in a good frame of mind. He's just a stud player. And I liked the number after what he did last week. I was expecting he would be close to the 20 rather than 30. And I saw Henley and him were sort of flip-flopped in my mind. I was like, thanks for coming. I'll take Sahith. All the way. I really like him as if he doesn't win this week, he's going to win again this year. He's just that good. We've been talking about him for 3 years, haven't we? And now we finally seeing it all. We're seeing it all come to fruition.
It's funny because we tend to look at some of the big hitting players out there and go, well, on a short, tight golf course, I'm going to stay away from him because his advantage is neutralized. And yet, sometimes you look at these big hitters. Tony Finau is a great example. Gary Woodland has often been a good example in a smaller sample size. Who's I just thinking of? Ludwig Aubert, who won the RSM Classic last year at the end of the year. He's a decent example where these guys get onto these shorter, tighter courses. Cam Davis is another one. get onto the shorter, tighter golf courses, and all of a sudden, like, they're like, all right, cool. I don't need to hit driver, and they're maybe going to hit 3-iron off the tee and just smash it everywhere and keep it in play against other players' drivers, which might go a little bit awry. So I think there's something to that. All of that said, getting to the 18th hole, I'm going to go back to the player that you mentioned right off the top of the pod. He is not a guy who's one of the best putters out there, but tee to green, he's just about as good as almost anybody out there. And Corey Connors showed it again last week. He was 9th in strokes gained off the tee. He was 9th in strokes gained on approach shots. He was not 9th with a putter in his hands on the greens, but we're hoping for a little spike week from Corey. He tends to putt much better at Waialae. Like I said earlier, 4 finishes inside the top 12 in his last 4 starts. So hoping for one of those big spike weeks. You know, all the Canadians are fired up to try to get on the President's Cup this year. So they are trying to get onto that team to play in their native Canada. And I think that Corey Connors, I mentioned him on the pod last week. He's a guy that I think is going to win something bigger than a Valero Texas Open at some point this year. I don't know if the Sony Open is much bigger than a Valero Texas Open, but I'll take it. And at 30-1, where he opened up, I think it's a good number. He's probably down to about 25 in most marketplaces. I can still buy that. 25 is still okay.
Yeah, I can't argue, as I said, because he just looks better to me. The more research I do this week, the more it points to him. Except for, as I said, look, he doesn't have to be the best putter out there. He just needs to be better than usual, and he'll be right up there. So we'll see how he handles the pressure.
Yeah, hopefully he can handle it well. We appreciate everybody out there handling us for a little bit. Thanks so much for listening. Remember, you can find us anywhere you find your favorite podcast throughout the entire PGA Tour season. Listen, subscribe, download, and rate us every week. For Ben Everill, I'm Jason Sobel. Good luck with all your bets for this week's Sony Open. Here's hoping you hit the green.